What are you doing? What are you looking at? What is he doing? Oh, he's dead. Oh, and I just got my arm blown off, so that's nice. Oh, there's a tank? Here! Let me use my anti-tank rifle that does absolutely fucking nothing to it! That doesn't count as C4. So I've come to the realization that, actually I lied. I didn't come to any realization. I knew this the entire time. I was actually one of the worst middle school students you have ever seen. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I might be exaggerating a little bit. See, now I was a pretty average student all throughout school. I would get C's, D's, B's, sometimes A's. When I first started school, I just aced everything. I would get honor rolls and principal's awards and all sorts of shit. I get distinguished honor roll, like all A's, like across the board, all the way through elementary school. But sure, that shit's easy. That's not much of an accomplishment. But then I got around to, I would say, middle school. And then it got to 7th grade. I did very well. And then 8th grade came around. And I would say around 8th grade, everybody was like 13, 14. And that is right around the mark where everybody just begins changing, if you know what I mean. Puberty. And this is where everybody just started getting really bad. This is where everybody started developing really their own type of personality. Their own opinions, their own thoughts, everything like that. Everything changes right around this time. Now, around this time, I was a very emo kid. That's about the best I could describe it as. Not the stereotypical emo kid or whatever, but I mean, like, I just was not a happy kid. I was just very upset. I was very just depressed. For no particular reason, I just had a very negative view towards everything. So yeah, I did have a lot of friends and stuff, but I was very blah, especially towards my teachers. Now, if you watched any of my previous videos, you would know that I hate math. I hate it with a passion. Now, I don't hate math because I was bad at it or anything. I was fairly average. I wasn't ridiculously good at it. I'm more of a language kid. I could just write things for days. I would rather write a novel than take a math quiz. And there's a lot to be said in that because I am not a type of guy to read a book. No offense to anybody that reads books, not my thing. But just let me put you in the setting here. Middle school, kids around 13, 14 years old, all start acting up, things like that, and we are in a math class. We are in this math class filled with all sorts of kids that have all sorts of problems, and then there's a couple really nice kids that are like really quiet, and then they'll do all their work and everything like that, and they'll just look at all the bad kids like they're fucking idiots. Or like they're murdering somebody if they talk back to the teacher. You know, there's always that one kid sitting there just staring at this kid, just arguing with the teacher like across the room, like... There's always that one kid surprised at it. So this was just a very bad group of kids just put together. It was a very toxic group. And the worst part about this group, I would say, is the fact that we are all literally friends. And you know how the teachers are like, oh, I'll just move you away from your friend, and then it'll just completely diffuse the problem. Everybody will stop talking, everybody will stop acting up. No, it didn't change shit. Everybody in the classroom were friends. So wherever you move the kid, whether it be in the back of the room or wherever it may be, he's always going to have a friend to talk to. What the fuck was that? So this was our math class, and we had our teacher. His name was Mr. Labasco. Very young white guy. Pretty ripped, too, to be honest with you. His arms just had ridiculous definition. I don't know how the fuck he did it. His forearms looked like a fucking map. He wasn't the tallest guy in the world. He was probably no taller than 5'10", maybe. And I've been my height 5'9" for the longest. So I've been 5'9" since, like, middle school. Like, I was always taller than every other kid. And then everybody just sprung up above me. Now I'm just really short compared to everybody else. I remember that all of us had this deep hatred for this teacher, and I honestly don't know or remember why. I don't think he was actually a dickhead. I think it was just because he was a teacher. He wasn't the meanest guy in the world or anything like that, not that I remember. We're setting up a trap here right now. I have satchel charges on the wall. I'm gonna wait for a guy to run through there, and I'm gonna blow him the fuck up. These are pro-Jev tactics right here. This teacher was actually a pretty good-looking guy, to be honest with you. He's a well-put-together young man, except he had one setback. He had a shaved head. Now, you could go and sit there and make these bald jokes here and there, left and right, you know what I mean? But it was a little bit more than that. You can see the dark hair follicles on his head, but right here, right on the top of his head, no hair follicles whatsoever. He had a bald spot. So we all just came up with this terrible nickname and shit to call him, and instead of Mr. Labasco, I called him Mr. Labasco. Bald spot. Terrible, I know. But I was probably the least of his worries, to be honest with you. For example, when he's up at the board just trying to write something down, like the do now or anything like that, somebody in the back of the class will just throw something at the board. Other people will just scream fuck in the back of the classroom and he won't know who it was. Some kids will bring in voice changers. One kid snuck in like a small megaphone and screamed in the back of the classroom. I mean, he got caught, but that was fucking funny. I remember this one time specifically when somebody in the back of the class screamed and they ended up turning around and catching the kid, and then he asked the kid to come out into the hallway and he just talks to them. For some odd reason, he never sent anybody to the office. He never did, and when he did, everybody just laughed at him. God, I feel so terrible talking about it now. We just completely victimized this guy. But he would bring students out in the hallway, kind of close the door halfway or close it all the way, and then have a chat with them so none of us could hear it. So while he's out there, somebody will just scream obscenities or throw something at the fucking door while he's sitting there talking to the kid. And we would always come up and make fun of all of his little catchphrases because he says these certain things all the time just to refer to certain things. Like, for example, a couple of the kids will say bro when they're talking to the teacher, and he would always go, I am not your bro. I am not your brother. I remember that there was a kid in the class named Jonas, and for some odd reason, he always thought Jonas was behind everything that happened in the classroom. So every single time something happened, he would just kind of turn his head and like peek in and be like, hey, Jonas? And we would just sit there and laugh at him all day. We would actually make songs out of it. We would all break out in song, like people would start banging on the desk, some kids would be clicking with their pencils, we'd just make a fucking musical in there, and everybody would be like, hey, Jonas? Hey, Jonas? It was just an orchestra of us making fun of him. And he would actually just sit there and just watch us. He couldn't stop any of us. And we also had security in our school, like legit, like cops with guns in the school. Now, I'm not gonna go and say I grew up in the middle of North fucking Philly. It wasn't that bad. But we had security officers that he would call in there all the time, and they would try to ask us to stop, and we would just keep fucking making songs, and we would keep screaming and shit. It was just awful. The more I look back on myself when I was a kid, the more I realize how much a fucking idiot I am. I'm not saying to be bad in school. I'm not saying to scream at a video game like a fucking idiot. I'm not condoning anything that I do. But I will tell you what, they do make some pretty good stories. Just saying.